Well, hey, what's going on? Nick Kirby here. Happy opening day week. Welcome to a special edition of Chatterbox Reds where I'm going to recap everything that happened this offseason, give you everything you need to know about the Cincinnati Reds heading into the 2026 season. Now, this episode today, not necessarily geared towards the diehard fans, the people that have watched every single episode of Chatterbox Reds all offseason long, because you probably know and understand everything that I'm about to say, although you might still find something interesting. This is really geared more towards the folks that, hey, I haven't been able to follow all the offseason news. I want to know everything that's going on with the Reds because I'm really excited. I'm fired up about opening day. This episode today is for you. This video is sponsored by Sharefax Credit Union. Check them out at sharefax.org. They have an auto promo going on right now offering 1.5% off your qualified rate when you refinance your vehicle with them. We're also presented by QC Kinetix. If knee pain or shoulder pain is slowing you down, talk to the care team at QC Kinetix Cincinnati about regenerative medicine options. You can learn more at qckinetix.com. All right, so let's start off. Let's recap what happened in 2025. Reds go 83-79 in their first year under Terry Francona. It was mostly a mediocre season for the Reds, pretty frustrating at times, but the Reds did decide to be somewhat mild to medium buyers, I guess, at the trade deadline, despite really not having great postseason odds. Thankfully, the New York Mets absolutely collapsed in the second half. The Reds, to their credit, they won 8 of their final 11 games, and they actually clinched a playoff spot despite losing on the final day because the Mets, who were really bad in the second half, also lost. Reds go to the wild card round. They lose 2-0 to the Los Angeles Dodgers. The wild card round, all games on the road, so the Reds didn't get a home playoff game in and out of the playoffs, but nonetheless, it was the Reds' first trip to the playoffs in a full season since 2013. Reds also made it in 2020 during the COVID season, but nonetheless, a positive development for a Reds franchise that hasn't done much of late. So what happened this offseason? Well, the Reds lost a lot of players. They lost Nick Martinez and Zach Littell. 2 of them combined for 218 innings thrown last season. Reds lost Austin Hayes, Gavin Lux, Miguel Andujar, Scott Barlow, Brent Suter, and Santiago Espinal. The Reds flirted with Kyle Schwarber this offseason. Maybe I was naive, but it felt like at times it was a real possibility as Schwarber actually met with Bob Castellini and the Reds front office at Great America Ballpark, but ultimately Schwarber decides to go to the Phillies. Reds did pivot a late offseason signing. The Reds signed former Red Eugenio Suarez to a 1-year, $15 million deal. Now, Suarez hit 49 home runs last year, which was one of the Reds' biggest problems the season ago, but he is now 34 years old, had a on-base percentage below 300 last season, so we'll see. But, as I say many times, 1-year deals can't really hurt you, so I'm certainly excited about Eugenio Suarez and his potential to bring some real power to the lineup. Reds added a ton of relievers as that was a major need going into the offseason. Reds had Pierce Johnson, Kyle Nicholas, and lefties Caleb Ferguson and Brock Burke. It really just completely reinvented the bullpen. They got Burke from the Angels in a 3-way trade that included Gavin Lux, who went to Tampa Bay. Kyle Nicholas will be starting at AAA. He was in the World Baseball Classic, didn't really pitch at all for the Reds in spring training. Reds also acquired Dane Myers from the Miami Marlins. He's a player that's very under the radar. He's a lefty killer. We'll talk more about him when we get to the lineup. Reds also signed J.J. Bleday, more on him coming up, and they signed Nate Lowe, a veteran with some real potential to a minor league deal. Now, what injuries are the Reds facing going into the season? Well, the first one, a big one, and really the only big one. Hunter Greene out until at least July after having right elbow surgery. It was a long saga this offseason. There was some writers saying that maybe Hunter Greene wasn't rushing back as quickly as he should to the Reds. Hunter Greene kind of fired back as well. It was a whole ordeal. Nonetheless, Hunter Greene is on the IL till at least July. Probably realistically, you're looking at maybe August by the time he comes back from rehab starts. So Hunter is going to miss at least probably 2/3 of the season. That is a big loss for the Reds. Nick Lodolo is also an interesting case going into the season. Everything was looking good for him all offseason and through spring training, but he had a blister in the final spring training start on Sunday that caused him to leave. Still up in the air if he's going to be ready for opening day or not. It's a blister. You're hoping it's not too long, but blisters have been a constant struggle for Nick Lodolo. Caleb Ferguson, the only other major Red on the IL to start the season. He has a right oblique strain, but he is not expected to be out too long. Knock on wood, no position player injuries to date. All right, so what does the Reds lineup look like going into the regular season? Now, the Reds are going to open against a lefty, so they're going to have a much different lineup. But this is probably your lineup against right-handed pitching, at least according to Fangraphs. They have TJ Friedl leading off, Matt McLain batting second, playing second base. Matt McLain had an incredible spring. McLain actually set the Red spring training record with 7 home runs this spring. You have Ellie De La Cruz batting third, playing shortstop. Sal Stewart batting cleanup, we expect. There was some comments about Terry Francona that said he actually is considering putting Stewart at cleanup and Suarez at number 5, which we kind of thought that would be flipped. Stewart would probably play first base or DH, probably going to be a rotation of that to some degree. Eugenio Suarez at DH, Tyler Stevenson at catcher. Will Benson in left field, batting 7th, also could be Spencer Steer. Noelvi Marte, who's going to be probably batting a lot lower in the lineup this year, 8th in right field, and Brian Hayes batting 9th, playing third base. As mentioned, Spencer Steer, the Reds are going to get him into the lineup as much as they can, as with Will Benson. So really, basically going into it against right-handed pitching, there's 10 players that all expected to get playing time against right-handed pitching. So one guy will be the odd man out. Steer, Benson, maybe Marte, the odd man out occasionally. We will see on that. Maybe even Brian Hayes, although Brian Hayes' defense certainly is a game changer. As you see on there, Nate Lowe, kind of a surprising roster addition, maybe to some. He was a non-roster invitee, but he's had a really good career. Last year, he really struggled in Washington with the Nationals. He went there. He was traded there from the Rangers. Nationals stunk. They were terrible. But he got traded to the Red Sox, played really well at the end of last year. He had a solid spring for the Reds. He's a veteran bat, so the Reds are going to give him the spot. And then, as mentioned, Dane Myers, you'll probably see him. I think he'll be in the opening day lineup. He certainly is going to be in there against lefties more often than not. He's a guy that's absolutely killed lefties throughout his career with the Marlins, a player I'm really excited about. If there's one of those opening day players, remember Nick Martini a couple years ago hit 2 home runs on opening day. I'm not saying Dane Myers hit 2 home runs, but there's that one player that a lot of people don't know that is a big game on opening day. My money would be on Dane Myers. Now, there's a couple other players who did not make the opening day roster. J.J. Bleday and Rhys Hines, they absolutely destroyed the baseball in spring training, had incredible spring trainings, but they're the odd men out. They're going to start the year in AAA. 2 players, though, that I think will help the Reds at some point this year. Bleday, a guy the Reds signed, really liked the signing. It's just Will Benson was just about as good as him, and I think Benson's a better defender, and Benson has a little bit better of a track record, certainly with the Reds. Rhys Hines, player's been up and down, but man, he looked really, really good in spring training. Still really young. Expect him to contribute. There's also Hector Rodriguez. He's the Reds' number 6 ranked prospect. He will start the year at AAA. Player that could, if he plays really well, could push his way onto the big leagues. You also have a lot of other players there down at AAA. There's just a lot of depth here with the Reds position player group. Blake Dunn, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Michael Tolia. He's a first baseman at 25 home runs in 2024. He's just going to be sitting down at AAA, so certainly some depth there. Now, in terms of the middle infield, Edwin Arroyo and Leo Balcazar are the only 2 Reds prospects on the 40-man roster that you're hoping can kind of be your shortstop infield depth at some point. Neither has played at AAA to this point, but they could at some point help out. That might be the one thing, if you look at this Reds position player group, that they're lacking is depth in the middle infield. You might look at, they don't have a true backup shortstop. The backup shortstop is Matt McLain. They'll have to mix and match some guys around. Sal Stewart could play some second base. Spencer Steer could play some second base. But they don't have a true backup middle infielder. So those guys will be very important to watch in AAA. Balcazar might start in AA. But those will be 2 important players to watch. One thing that is really good here with the Reds is their defense. This defensive lineup is so much better than we've seen in recent memory with the Reds. Brian Hayes is, I think, the best defensive player on planet Earth. It's a huge addition there at third base defensively. Everyone else is not. There's no one else that I look at that projected lineup that I think is a defensive liability. Everyone I think is at least average to above average at their position. Some guys, I think Matt McClain, I think Elly De La Cruz can get there if he able to clean up some of the errors, can be well above average. So defensively, this is going to be a really good defensive team, I think, that can provide a lot of value. That was something Terry Francona really emphasized last year going into spring trading, but unfortunately still had a lot of players playing out of position. You had Jeimer Candelario at third base, who absolutely stunk at third base defensively. You had Gavin Lux playing left field, who was not a good left fielder. The numbers were really, really bad with him in left field. You hopefully are not going to see any of those players playing out of position outside of maybe like a guy like Sal Stewart covering second base for a day or two. So that's, I think, going to be a big bonus to the Reds. Power. I think there's a lot more power. Obviously, Eugenio Suarez, the headliner there, he hit 49 home runs last year. But a guy like Sal Stewart continues to show power, could really be a guy that pushes for 20, 25, 30 home runs. How about Elly De La Cruz? Elly De La Cruz was incredible in the first half, was struggling in the second half, had that quad injury, but he's a guy that I think has 30 home run power. And then Matt McClain, as we already mentioned, he had 7 home runs in spring training. Looks incredible. Looks like he has legitimate power. He hit 15 home runs last year during a down year. How many can he hit? I don't know. I don't think it's impossible for Matt McClain to hit 25 home runs this year. So I think there's going to be a lot more power, and not to mention, you don't have Gavin Lux and Santiago Espinal, with all due respect, who had a combined 5 home runs and nearly 750 at-bats last season. All right, let's shift over to the starting rotation. So Andrew Abbott, your Reds opening day starter, all-star last season in 2026, a pitcher that has continued to define the odds. Most of the analytic community has never believed in Andrew Abbott. Because his expected stats just do not match what he's been able to do on the field, but he continues to do it. A lot of the analytic community, myself included, kind of said at this point, Andrew Abbott is what he is. He's going to have to now be bad for us to not believe in him anymore because he's been able to do it. Now, Andrew Abbott had a rough spring. How much does that mean? We'll see on opening day, but he is your opening day starter. Beyond that, it's kind of up in the air. Nick Lodolo was supposed to start the second game, but he has that blister. Sounds like it's unlikely he's going to pitch that second game. I'm assuming Brady Singer gets moved up to game number 2 against the Red Sox, and then one of Rhett Lauder or Chase Burns makes that final start. Now, the Reds are going with an interesting, though they were planning on going with an interesting rotation. They have 6 starters, but they're not doing a 6-man rotation, which I know probably sounds a little bit weird. Brandon Williamson, I think, is in the bullpen, but the trio of Lauder, Burns, and Brandon Williamson are all capable of being starters. One of them will be a reliever. But again, if Nick Lodolo gets put on the IL, they're just all starters, and that is what it is. Brandon Williamson, coming back from Tommy John surgery, looked really good this spring. I think kind of forced his way onto the roster. Now, the Reds, the big talk was how great this pitching depth was. Obviously, when you lose Hunter Green, that is a massive loss. But if you're losing Nick Lodolo on top of that for any time, all of a sudden the starting pitching depth is shrinking quite a bit. One guy that has looked good this spring was Chase Petty, one of the Reds' top prospects that really had a very disappointing 2025. Chase Petty could find his way onto the rotation if there's another injury here at some point, a pitcher to watch. But the Reds' rotation will certainly be tested early. Now, the Reds' bullpen. You have Emilio Pagan as your closer coming back. I think that's really important to Terry Francona. Tony Santillan was absolutely nails. He'll be your number 2 guy. Then you have Graham Ashcraft, Pierce Johnson, Brock Burke, Connor Phillips, Sam Moll, and we think Brandon Williamson, but he's not really technically a reliever. There's a lot of off days in the month of April, so you don't need, I think, as many relievers as you will like in the dog days of August. Pagan and Santillan, great last year. Looked tired at the end of the year. Hopefully the depth can kind of help preserve them a little bit more. There'll be players to watch early in the year. Graham Ashcraft had a really difficult spring. In some ways, he kind of may be fortunate to be on the opening day roster. He's definitely got something, I think, to prove. Pierce Johnson has been a very, very reliable reliever. I think Reds fans are going to like him. I think he's just a workhorse. He's a big veteran in that group. He's actually good friends with Emilio Pagan, so they'll like that. Sam Moll, who's kind of maybe on the bubble going into spring, had an incredible spring training. It was really, really good. Hopefully Sam Moll could find some of that 2023 when he was incredible after the Reds traded for him. He could be a big piece. And with Caleb Ferguson starting the IL, he's a big lefty. The big wild card in that group is Connor Phillips. He's by far, in my opinion, has the most upside of any reliever in the Reds bullpen. He really struggled this spring to start, but his last 5 outings, 0 runs and 0 walks. So that was good to see. Connor Phillips, I think, is the guy that if there's one player that can elevate this Reds bullpen, it's Connor Phillips. Now, there's still some depth. There's really good depth in this bullpen. Kyle Nicholas, a guy the Reds acquired in a trade from the Pirates for Tyler Callahan. He's going to start the year at AAA, but I think he's a big league arm right now. Zach Maxwell and Luis May, 2 very talented arms, but have really struggled to throw strikes at time. They're going to be sitting down at AAA. Good depth to have there. TJ Antone looked pretty good this spring. He's another option. And then they have a couple other options down there as well, in Hagen Danner, Lyon Richardson, and a guy I really like, Trevor Kunsel. So a lot of depth there. All right, now as for the top prospects to watch for your Cincinnati Reds, we've already mentioned Chase Petty, Hector Rodriguez, Edwin Arroyo, and Leo Balcazar, probably the closest to the big leagues of the top prospects, or at least the ones that we haven't already mentioned. 2 other players really to watch this year will be Alfredo Duno, the catcher. I'm expecting he's going to start the year at Dayton. If you give a chance to get to a Dayton Dragons game to watch Alfredo Duno, I would highly recommend that. He's an awesome player, big dude behind the plate. I think a player that really could be the next big thing for the Cincinnati Reds. Another player, Cam Collier, he's probably going to start the year at AA, might get to AAA at some point. Kind of had an up and down minor league career, but one of the Reds' top draft picks was a first-round draft pick a couple years ago. Certainly a player to watch this season. Everyone else is pretty well down the totem pole in the minor leagues, still quite a ways away. But there are a lot of talented prospects in the Reds minor league system. All right, projections for the Reds going into 2026. We start off with PECOTA, typically considered the gold standard. They have the Cubs winning the division. They have the Brewers second, Pirates third. And they have a Reds at 77.8 wins, a 19% chance of reaching the postseason. Fangraphs, not much, actually worse, has Reds at 77.0 wins, only a 13.1% chance of making the playoffs. Vegas, the betting odds a little bit more favorable. They have the Reds at 80.5 wins. They have the Reds plus 180 to make the playoffs, so the implied odds of that is 35.7%. Now, you have all these odds. What do they mean? Typically not a whole lot for teams that are kind of within this range. Reds' recent PECOTA projections versus the actual. Last year, Reds were projected to win 74. What did they do? They won 83 games. 2024, they actually projected the Reds to win 79. They only won 77. 2023, they were way off. They projected 67 wins. The Reds ended with 82. 2022, for some reason, they projected that team to win 80 games. They only won 62. Then in 2021, they projected the Reds at 79 wins, and the Reds won 83. So that's an average of being 10 games off one way or the other per Red season, and the Reds have won 9+ games, more than their projection in 2 of the last 3 seasons. Your NL Central outlook. So the Cubs, they're, I think, pretty clearly the most talented roster. That's why they're the favorites. They added Alex Bregman this offseason, also starting pitcher Edward Cabrera from the Marlins. Now, I'm not sure their additions are really that big, if any, of a net positive, because they lost Kyle Tucker, one of the best hitters on planet Earth, and lost a top prospect, Owen Casey, who was ready for the big leagues. But to their credit, they do have a young roster that should still be improving. So I'm not sure they're really much better, but they're still really, really good. The Brewers, they traded their ace, Freddie Peralta, also traded their starting third baseman, Caleb Durbin. So on paper, they don't look as scary, but I'm done ever not believing in the Milwaukee Brewers. They perform their expectations every single year, and until they prove otherwise, I will say, yep, they're absolutely a threat to win the NL Central. The Pirates are probably the one team that experts disagree on the most in the NL Central. The Pirates added a lot to what was one of the smallest payrolls in the sport last year. They added Ryan O'Hearn, Brandon Lau, Marcelo Zuna, and Gregory Soto. Pirates have a really good rotation, of course, with Paul Skeens at the top. They have a lineup with some potential, certainly have the potential to be much better. They were one of the worst, if not the worst lineup in all of baseball last year. But they do have really, really bad defense. We'll see how much that is able to bite them. They move on from Brian Hayes, kind of get away from the defensive model, see if that catches up to the Pirates this year. St. Louis Cardinals, well, this might be the worst St. Louis team in most of you watching or listening's lifetime. Cardinals traded away Sonny Gray, Brandon Donovan, Wilson Contreras, Nolan Arenado, among others. That should be a really, really bad St. Louis team. I think if there's one thing you can probably count on this year, on a division with maybe a lot of things that could swing one way or the other, the Cardinals should finish last. All right, so some final thoughts, expectations for the season. The first thing is depth. There's so much more position player depth. That's probably the reason to be the most excited about this team going into the season. The Hunter Green injury, it really hurts. I can't sugarcoat that. I think there may be some people who's maybe kind of sugarcoated it a little bit too much, saying, well, he's been hurt all the time. Yeah, but he's still made about 20 starts every year, and he's still been one of the best pitchers in baseball. I do think that injury really does hurt this team. They still have a good rotation, but how good is going to depend on, A, how quickly Hunter Green can get back, the health of the rest of the starters, then how good can Burns, Lauder, and Brandon Williamson be? How much can they contribute this season? Reds are going to need them early in the year. Likely outcomes for the Reds this year. I mean, this is, to be honest, probably is a competitive team, probably around 500. They absolutely can compete for a playoff spot if things go right. I think there's only like one team that has better odds that is projected into the playoffs than the Reds. So when you say like they're, 20-30% chance, okay, that's still one of the highest odds because they're not going to, it's not going to be everyone in the playoffs. So they're right there. If the Cubs underperform a little, if the Brewers actually finally meet their expectations for once in their lives, I think this is a team that could win the division. I think the Reds have to have things go their way to win the division, but they could. They're absolutely right there. What are the keys for success this year? Elly De La Cruz has to be a star all year. It's pretty simple. Elly De La Cruz is one of the best players in baseball up to the All-Star break, and then the quad injury or whatever caught up with him, and he was really bad in the second half. If Elly plays like the player that we saw the first 3 months of the season for the whole year, this Reds team gets to, I think, a whole nother level. The second key is Sal Stewart the real deal. If he is, he can take this offense to a whole nother level, can really kind of be that second really good hitter. Not just a nice guy that's above average, a guy that's well above average. I think he's the other guy that has that potential there with Elly De La Cruz. Reds have to really maximize their platoon advantages. A lot of platoon guys like Benson, like Dane Myers, maybe Spencer Steer in some ways is a little bit of a platoon player. Those platoon players have to play well. J.J. Bleday, Rhys Hines can get put up into those roles as well, and the Reds have to maximize that. If they do that, I think there could be some extra wins in there from that. The bullpen stability, is it there? Obviously, we talked about Connor Phillips. Can he kind of be that guy that steps up and becomes one of the big aces down there in the bullpen? But can the bullpen be a strength for the Reds? It's kind of a crapshoot, and that's how bullpens are unless you're pumping in a ton of money. It's going to be a crapshoot, I think, for the Reds, but where will it swing? That's a big key this year. Obviously, the rotation health, that's going to always be your key going into a season. I need Hunter Green not just to come back, but to come back and dominate down the stretch. Reds do have a very difficult schedule down the stretch, so getting Hunter Green back in the second half could be very key. And the last key, this might sound simple, but beat up on the St. Louis Cardinals. The Reds only went 6-7 against the Cardinals last year. Can you win 10 games against the Cardinals? That's a 4-game swing in a season, which could be huge. I mean, that would have took the Reds last year from an 83-win team to an 87-win team. So there's extra wins there, I think, with the St. Louis Cardinals. You got to beat up on them. So that's what I got. Hopefully it helped give you a little bit of insight into the Reds this season. If you haven't been following, we do Chatterbox Reds in the 9th inning of every single Reds game all season long. We're live on YouTube in the 9th inning, and then we have a podcast up the morning after every single Reds game all season long. And this year, we're also going to do some off-day shows. So really, we should have just about a podcast every single morning for you from opening day, hopefully all the way into a deep postseason run. We got you covered here on Chatterbox Reds. Well, thanks so much for watching or listening today. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like button, subscribe to Chatterbox Sports and hit the bell in the top right corner so you're notified anytime that we go live. If you're listening in podcast form, or even if you're just watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to Chatterbox Reds everywhere you get podcasts. We also would really appreciate if you could take a couple seconds and leave us a 5-star review. I know there's a lot of people that are going to be looking for Reds podcasts. The reviews are something that really helps the metrics to refer people to our podcast. So if you could just leave us a quick review, just say, Nick's handsome, something like that, that would be great. We'd appreciate it. All right, well, thanks so much for watching and listening today to Chatterbox Reds. Happy opening day week. Go Reds.